The industry is going crazy, has been for 2+ years, really. Basically 2 years. Everybody's making money. Travelers are making money. The hospitals, I think, are making money. Agencies are making money. We're going to bring on, I'm really excited about this guest. We're going to bring on Rich Darnell. Rich, you guys may know him from Travel Nurse Rich. He is all over TikTok. He's all over YouTube. Really a big fan of this guy. Doing some really good social media from a travel nurse's standpoint. We're going to bring Rich on today to talk about all the money being made, just his experience in general, what it's like to be on social media, and we're going to talk about where this industry is right now and how far it's come and how crazy things are with big, big money on today's edition of Travel Evolved. It's Travel Evolved. I'm Mark Holloway. Welcome to the episode, everybody. So excited about this one. This is gonna be fun. I've got a guest coming on today. Rich, you guys may know Travel Nurse Rich. Rich Darnell has been doing some TikToks for quite a while now. My team spotted him. I had seen him already. So when they approached me saying, "Hey, we'd like to see about maybe having Rich join us," I said, absolutely, because everything I have seen from this guy has been right on. I'm not, trying to, be a mutual admiration society here with him, but he really does know his stuff. And this is what I've actually been waiting for a while, and that is, I think a traveler who is willing to go out onto social media and really explain some things that sometimes are a mirror of what we're doing here, but really from a traveler standpoint, which is what we can't give you on Travel Evolved. So Rich does, and everything I've seen from this guy is right on. He talks a lot about taxes. He talks a lot about the financial aspect, which is what you don't typically see, or if I do, oftentimes there's some things I'm like, it's close, but they really swung and missed on this aspect of it. Haven't yet seen anything that Rich has swung and missed on. So he and I have been talking off and on for a little while. We've been trying to coordinate this episode. He's busy. We've been busy. So it looks like we're going to get it done today. I'm excited about it. And we're going to talk a lot today about just where the industry has come. Rich has not been in traveling for very, very long. I'm not sure how long, but I don't think it's been a huge amount of time. I'm hoping that he at least got into travel before things went so high on the big dollars, because I think it'd be nice to talk to him about that, what he's seen. But it's really interesting because there has been such a crazy amount of financial changes in healthcare travel over the last certainly 2 years, to the point where it's kind of insane, kind of crazy. Today we're going to talk about everybody is making money, and I mean agencies too, which is what you're never going to hear somebody in my position talk about. They don't want you to know how much money they're making because I think they feel that if you know, then you're not going to want to, work for that company. But everybody's making it. I'm hoping to get an opportunity today to talk to Rich about that, explain to him, so through you guys, what it is that agencies are making, what we're not making, because I think there's some misconception out there. But for the most part, it is a really lucrative industry right now. I don't know how long that's going to last. There are risks that everybody takes. I think for travelers, you guys are absolutely earning every penny of what you're making. I don't think it's free money, I guess to say the least. There are fewer of you out there. The risks seem to be much higher. The chances of you getting canned out of the blue because of the rates being so high seem to be a lot, seem to be really, really extensive right now as well. I think there's fewer travelers out there in general. I think the industry lost a bunch, as predicted by those of us here at Travel Evolved, because I said, no matter how you felt about the vaccine mandate, it's going to have its toll. Making people do something that they may or may not be wanting to do. And let's just be frank, the people that didn't want to take a vaccine, that were very against it, that said they're so against it they're going to leave, couldn't help the industry. But when you've got people that are, I guess, making those decisions that aren't seeing that firsthand, it's not. I'm not surprised. And I predicted that. I said, no matter what happens and how you feel, it's going to affect people. Now, I don't know if it affects you guys negatively or positively. That's being honest. It might actually affect you positively, because if there's less people, there could be less competition, which means it also could drive the rates up and be higher, continue to keep the rates as they are. I don't really know. It's one of the things I didn't anticipate. Back a couple years ago on some different things I had done, I said the rates are going to stay high for quite a while, and so far I've been okay and right on that. I didn't know that it would also have a lot to do with the fact that there would be less supply of travelers, but that's the case. So anyway, getting back to Rich, if you check him out, it's called Travel Nurse Rich. TikTok is hard. He does a really good job of mixing up his TikToks. And if you guys haven't done TikTok, if you're old like me, give it a shot. You actually will be surprised at how engaging it is. You can do it to get some good information like what Rich is providing. It's also a lot of fun. There's some silly stuff out there. I like looking at people doing crazy extreme skiing and surfing and jumping off of base jumping and skydiving and things with sharks. It's just, there's a lot of really cool things in our world that people can now capture on video. And I think that part of TikTok is really pretty interesting. I mean, for those of you that are on TikTok, you'll sit there and look at your phone. Next thing you know, an hour's gone by. You're like, what did I just do? But sometimes for me, I need that mental break of literally just being a zombie staring at other people doing things I want to be doing. But Rich does a good job of having some fun. He does some fun stuff. Most of his stuff, though, is pretty informative, even if there is some fun behind it. He's really doing a good job of trying to help you guys get through that learning curve of being a traveler as fast as possible. He's an ICU RN. I know he does live also out of an RV. So I know a little bit about him. He's married, I know that, so he travels. He's married. He lives out of an RV. We'll find out some more today about how his lifestyle works. But he's I think a new breed of traveler, and what I love about him is he is trying to help. There is nothing, you don't get money from TikTok. You don't, it doesn't pay your bills. So what he is doing out there is putting himself out there, which, trust me, I know that is not easy to do, in order to try to help other people become stronger, and better in their healthcare travel career faster. And it's very admirable to me that people do that. There's a lot of folks that will do it and just throw things out there, but Rich puts some thought behind it. And again, I'm urging you guys, check him out on TikTok, find him. You can do a search for that. You can also, he's got a YouTube channel, same thing, Travel Nurse Rich. So I would use that as another medium to keep informed on. I think you're going to see some things and hear some things on there that I can't provide that seem to be really informative as well. So I know he's probably got to get going. He and I have been trying to schedule this for a while, and so we finally got things going. So I'm going to pull him up, and we'll get this thing going, because I just don't know where this is going to go. We kind of talked about, we want to talk about the money aspect and what's changed, and openly have a conversation about who's making the money, how many people are making money, and again, even the agencies, and let's openly discuss that, because it's real. But I also said, let's talk about whatever you want to talk about. So it's going to be fun. I see him on there, so let's grab him real quick, and let's talk about big money. Hang tight. Hey, Rich, how are you?
Hey, what's going on, Mark?
The famous Rich Darnell, by the way.
That's right.
TikTok
Travel Nurse
famous,
Rich. Yeah, Travel Nurse Rich to all my fans out there, right?
That's right.
That's
right. You gotta have you're growing. I notice. It's I've got a personal page that I don't really do a lot of TikTok myself because I'm older than dirt and I just can't really figure it out. But you pop up a lot because I do follow some travel nurses and some things. So you're oftentimes when I get on TikTok, you're the first thing I see, which is really cool. So we're going to talk to our audience a lot about what you're doing, and that's how we found you. My team actually found you, and I had already seen you too. And they'd reached out and said, "Hey, listen, why don't you guys get together?" Which I think is awesome because I'm not a big TikToker. I try to be. I've got a daughter who's in college, and my son has just finished up high school. So, she and I will send TikToks back and forth, but it's usually cute pit bulls and boxer dogs and things like
Right.
that and hockey stuff. But
Exactly.
and she and I are both really into music, and she's cool because I'm an '80s guy, right? So and so I'll send her stuff, and she's like, rock stars were cooler back in your day, Dad. And I'm like, I know. So she's got that hip kind of thing, and she appreciates old guy music. So I've done one thing right, and that is taught her how to listen to music. So anyway, thank you for joining us today. I really appreciate it. I know you're busy. I know you're traveling. You're working days, nights. What's the
Nights, yeah, working tonight actually. So yeah,
and you're on the East Coast, so you need to get to bed. Is basically we got to get this thing wrapped up so you can
it's
get
all
some
good.
sleep, probably.
No, I'm gonna power through this day. So we're just gonna power through. I'll be exhausted at like 5 in the morning.
I don't know how you guys,
it's
I
okay.
don't know how you guys do it. And so, well, let's just start off. I mean, let me fire some questions. Again, we're talking about big money, and when you and I talked, which I really appreciated, we had a very open communication about just the money that's going on. We're going to jump into that in a minute, but because it's really unique time, and you haven't been traveling too terribly long, right? How long have you been a traveler?
3.5 years.
Yeah, so
So
you've kind of
3.5 years.
been. You got a good start before a lot of the
Before
I guess I'll
COVID.
call it the craziness. Yeah, so you
Yeah,
got a taste
I
of
had
that. But
pre-COVID.
right, most of your career has been this kind of insanity that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
So what got you? Let's just start off. What really kind of got you started? How come you said a few things on your TikToks, and you've got a lot of TikToks that talk about you made this leap of faith. People told you couldn't do it because you didn't have enough experience and all this different stuff. So let's talk about that real briefly. You jumped into travel and you weren't quite sure you should be yet, right?
Yeah, not only that, but first off, I didn't think I even could, to be honest with you. And it's probably because my idea of a travel nurse was the exact same as like what a lot of people think of when they think travel nurse. They think somebody who's single, who's just going to up and leave everything behind and go travel and touring the country. And I knew I couldn't
Footloose
do
and
that.
fancy free, right?
Yeah, because I have a wife and kids at home, and obviously not trying to leave those guys. And it wasn't until, and I guess let me just walk through exactly what happened, because I think it's an interesting enough story. My second son was getting ready to be born. Like, we were probably 6 months out. And so I let my boss know, me and my wife came up with an idea. One of us was going to drop down to part-time, and it was going to be the one who was making the least amount of money. And at the time, that was me, because my wife's also a nurse, and she's been a nurse like 10 years longer than I had. So I was like, yeah, I'll just drop to part-time. Well, I told my boss, hey, if I can get a part-time position, I'll stay. You have 6 months to figure out how to get me to part-time, which I thought would be a pretty easy thing to do. And if not, then I have to leave and try to find some way to get paid more. And I never even considered travel nursing. But then during that 6-month period, I had spoken to a couple of friends, and a friend of mine, he had left the place that I was working. And I was like, this guy leaving, like, what is he leaving for? Because he was the guy that would work 17 days in a row because he was making a fortune on overtime. And the
Right.
place I was at was paying incredible overtime wages at the time. And I'm like, dude, what is he doing that he's going to make more? And found out it was travel nursing. And I was like, well, how can he do that? He's got a wife and a daughter. And so I called him. I sent some messages. We talked for like a couple of weeks. He showed me his pay stubs. And it really got the gears turning, like, oh, maybe this is a possibility, So I come home all excited. I pitch this idea to my wife, and I go, hey, what do you think about the idea of me doing travel nursing? And obviously she immediately protested because she thought the same thing I did. And I was like, no, trust me, it's possible. Like check it out. And kind of laid out the plan for her. And, and we figured we'd give it a try for a contract. And worst case scenario, I don't like it, and I go back to bedside somewhere. Like, if it wasn't going to work out, I wasn't going to let it ruin things. And then lo and behold, not only did it work out, it was probably one of the single best career decisions I have ever made.
Yeah, clearly.
With everything
So
considered.
what's the plan? How does it work for you guys? What is it? Just briefly, just give us a quick.
Yeah,
for those
so-
people that are thinking the same thing as you do, how does this work as a married couple with young kids that you don't want to, dad doesn't want to be living his life, without seeing them be young kids.
Yeah, so even though my main stuff is on TikTok, I also do YouTube videos. One of the YouTube videos I made not too long ago was the different styles of travel nursing. And I don't know if anybody's actually talked about this like before. So I just kind of came up with this idea of different ways people that I know, including myself, do travel nursing. And I go through all those details. But for me, and it really kind of opened my eyes to like all the different types of like personality types and like where you're at in your life. Like lots more people qualify for it than I could ever imagine, So what I do is I try to take contracts within a 3-hour radius from home. So I have 3 state licenses because I'm not part of the compact states. And then I just basically apply to contracts within that 3-hour radius. And I only work 36 hours a week. So I go up on day one. Right now I'm in a local contract, actually, which is my first local contract. But normally I drive, 3 hours away. Get up there on the first day, work my first day or first night or whatever it ends up being, work 3 days in a row, and then I head home after sleeping, 5 hours for the last night. I get home, and next thing you know, I have 4 days off with my family. And if you think about it, I have no mandatory on-call days. I have no mandatory overtime. I can't get frozen over for 4 hours after a shift. So, I mean, like my days that are scheduled are the days that I work. And that's completely different than what it used to be when I was a staff nurse. And I actually see my family now more doing travel nursing than I ever did with staff nursing, just because I don't have to work nearly as many hours.
That's awesome.
Absolute craziness.
For those people that are going, wait a minute, that you just opened up, I hope, at least a couple people's eyes, which that means we've already had a victory on this podcast. It's no different than being married to a firefighter, right? I mean, if you're a guy or a gal who's a firefighter, you go off and you're at the station for 3 days. Typically, I know firefighters. A really good friend of mine is a chief of a fire department here in Denver, and you still. But when you're home, and you are absolutely engaged. You have nothing going on. So you probably have to negotiate a block schedule, I'm sure, if on an interview, or is that the assignments you look for?
I usually mention it during the interview, and then if they seem like they're agreeing to it, then I'll throw it in the contract to make sure. Or if I'm local right now,
you walk away, right?
If it's a long contract, that's true. Yeah. Because there's so many opportunities out there with contracts. I mean, you can put whatever you feel like you need in a contract. And realistically, if they're going to agree to it, then you can go. And if not, if it's important enough to you, you can always just walk.
I think that's true for most travelers, whether you're allied or nursing. I think you're probably right. If you're brand spanking new and you don't have a lot of experience, you probably have to. You may not be able to be in your situation yet, but it's coming. In other words, every time you take an assignment, you get more experience in your belt, which means you have more leverage because you're more desirable. So those people that are saying, yeah, but I've only got a couple years of experience in me, yeah, you may not be where Rich is and be able to demand that, but look at you 3 years later, and you really can dictate the perfect assignment for you and your family, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
And then as far as like a radius rule goes, are there some assignments that you can't take? You're on a local one, you said now, which we can certainly talk about, but you probably have to at least get certain far enough away for the hospital to justify or merit that they're going to pay you as a traveler as opposed to a per diem, quote unquote local.
Yeah, that's all about the stipend. And with the local contract, don't even try to get a stipend. With the local contract, you just take the pay cut and enjoy being really close to home, realistically, and that's what I do. You got to be far enough away that your job requires sleep to qualify to get paid as a traveler. A lot of agencies go by the 50-mile rule, they call it, but whenever you look into this, like for the IRS, like they don't actually have a 50-mile rule. They have 2 guidelines that I can remember, at very least one of them, and the one is that you're far enough away that your job, it requires you to sleep. And most people have decided that 50 miles is pretty acceptable for being far enough away, that way no one gets in trouble if someone's audited. And so,
especially after a 12-hour shift, it's a little different probably for someone who's on a 12-hour than is on an 8. I always recommend talking to a CPA. I think that I've said this multiple times on my podcast, on my YouTube, that if you're going to be a traveler, the first thing you should do is get a CPA. Don't go to an accountant. Certainly don't go to one of those pop-up things that happen every April, because there are things that it's worth the money to you. Spend a couple $100 to get a professional that understands what you do. And rather than listen to you and I mean, I think they should always go back to their professional and get that great advice. But perfect. And for those of you that don't know, Rich does a lot of stuff on taxes, and I'm just going to give you some kudos. Really knowledgeable, especially for not being in this industry very long. I'm always so careful, because I'm sure a lot of things I say are not always 100% perfect. I think that's okay. I'm not trying to claim to be a CPA. I'm giving the best advice, but I always default and say, don't take my word for it. Really talk to a professional. But you do have a lot of stuff that you've worked hard on. Learning the tax portion, especially, that's one thing I did notice with you, which is
by far one of the most it's by far one of the most annoying things I've ever had to try to tackle and digest. To be real, have you ever read tax publications?
Yeah. You
They're
know what
so
you're doing. You feel
ridiculous.
comfortable now, so you at least have a general idea that you're not, doing. And I'm sure you don't do it on your own. I'm sure you have a professional that's working with you, or a number of people that are
Right.
alongside, which is great. So okay, let's talk about TikTok for a second. You
Sure.
you're out there. You've got this career. It's hitting it all four cylinders. Just it's starting to make sense to you, and you decide you want to talk to other people that and kind of help them. I'm guessing. I mean, that's what we all do. That's what I'm doing. I think that's what you're doing. You jump on TikTok. That was your first media. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, it really was. Well, this is the place that I started the travel nurse social media experiment. Basically, was on TikTok.
Yeah. Talk about.
I'd
Let's talk about.
actually,
What'd you do first?
yeah. So let's rewind before I even started that. Actually, so I started off trying to experiment with different social media things back in the day when I thought, hey, know what would be fun? Playing video games for a living, right? And I thought that would be fun because a friend of mine was like, hey, might as well start streaming, might as well get used to talking to people online and all this other kind of stuff. And, so I was like, yeah, sure, why not? So I just made a bunch of random content. I made hundreds of like little, YouTube shorts. I met somebody who's doing the TikTok stuff and I was like, might as well try the TikTok. Well, anyway, I did it for like, I think probably 6 months and I made hundreds of TikTok videos about like gaming stuff and it went nowhere. And when I say nowhere, I mean like, oh my goodness, it was embarrassing how nowhere it went. And I thought my content was pretty good. I was like, man,
Sure.
some of the stuff's pretty clever, pretty funny, useful, and it really just didn't have any kind of legs. Well, one day I'm getting ready to go to work and I'm in my camper, at the campground, because that's where at my assignment. And here I'm getting ready to leave and I had like an hour with nothing to do. And I started thinking, I'm like, what could I do to pass the time? Because I'm here by myself right now anyway,
Right.
I already got done FaceTiming with my wife and kids, like they're content, I have literally nothing to do. I already worked out for the day. I'm like, what in the world could I do? And then I'm thinking, even though I'm like, maybe I shouldn't give up on the whole, because I pretty much gave up on the whole gaming social media
Yeah.
stuff. Smart
Yeah.
call, by the way, really smart call. And I said, I wonder if this would work if I decided to just show my face and just start, talking about some things. So I made 3 videos that first day, and I posted all of them on TikTok, and all of them did better than like my best gaming videos. Like all of them did better right off the start.
Right.
And then I think it was by the end of the first week, I had more followers than I had for the entire 6 months prior where I did all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, well, this has some legs. People want to hear about it. So at the very least, it should be worth, kind of going into it, because travel nursing for me was always way more mysterious than it should ever be. Because even when you try to look things up online, the information is just not really good information, especially whenever you look up pay. You always get some these websites that are averaging pay based on salary, and the salary just looks incredibly low for travel nursing. Like I have never
Yeah.
made as little as what they claim travel nurses make. And so
It's
yeah.
always been the issue with traveling in general is that, and I've said, unfortunately, travelers have been forced to get a lot of their information from each other, which is, I think, the absolute best source, provided
Right.
you qualify it, right? You just can't take some knucklehead's word for it because you never know if they know what they're talking about. And we've seen things, I'm sure you have, that is like, whoa, where is that coming from? You certainly aren't going to get a lot of quality information as a traveler from someone from my side of the desk. I just don't believe you will. I mean, unfortunately, there is reasons, which we'll get into, as to why it is secretive. But I believe it's by design, which is why we created Travel Evolved, is because we thought, whether people like me, dislike me, agree with me, at least there's a different perspective. And I felt the industry would be better as a whole if we just threw it all out there. Why this cloak of secrecy around it? And it's because, here's the bottom line. Companies don't want travelers to know how much money they're making. They just flat out don't. There's a lot of industries like that, right? I mean, I don't know
Right,
if
absolutely.
Pepsi, if the soda industry wants you to know how much money they're making, or the fast food industry. I mean, it's not uncommon, but it's really unique as to, in my opinion, the fact that you guys are the ones generating the revenue. You're the ones doing the labor, and yet you are
Right.
behind
We're the
a cloud of
legwork over here.
secrecy. And it makes this industry is wacky. It's always been wacky, and for whatever reason, I guess just sheer a habit that people don't seem to care. Well, they're starting to care now. So hopefully we're going to get you some more listeners after this one, because I think, and viewers, because I really
sure.
would urge people to watch you. And isn't it interesting how when you put yourself out there, I mean, it is scary, is it not? The first couple of times you put your mug out there, like we do here, it is. You got a lot of people that just want to hate. I mean, there's haters. That's a real thing. You don't know that until you do this.
Yeah,
and you
all
have to
over
have
the
some thick
comment
skin.
section.
God, it's sometimes don't you sit there and go, is this all you have to do? I mean, here I am trying my best to do something, and you just want it. I mean, the comments you get are like, wow, you've got nothing going on with your day. It's amazing, but you just got to let it roll off, because I'm sure, like you get overwhelmingly good response. So you just absolutely have to ignore the 1% of the people that just don't like what you're doing. Okay, fine, it's not for you.
Right.
Go away. Go follow some girls with jiggling boobs and watch them do their thing on TikTok, and stay away from me and my education of travel nurses, right? And that's really what it comes down. Isn't that funny? Anyway. So
it cracks. I would say it cracks me up so much. Actually, funny story about that. Just the other day, I had a guy who was talking about how basically he was making a claim that was the exact opposite of what I had mentioned in the video. Then he decided to not only argue with like all the people that were commenting like on my side of things, but then he decided to watch a bunch of my other videos and comment negatively on those as well. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, is this what you do with your time, with your free time? Is just go, and that's okay, and that's all right.
Yeah, that's it's the risk you run, but I mean, to me it's interesting, and we have it here. Everyone does, but it's I don't think and I'm a big fan of like Gary Vee and stuff. I listen to a lot of his stuff, and he's always giving good advice on just stay the course. You are doing if there are people that are that upset or people that are whatever, it means you're striking a nerve, and you really have to pay attention to what the real bulk of people are saying, and I'm sure like us, you are getting nothing but good feedback. I'm a fan of yours, so I mean,
I appreciate it. And honestly, full disclosure, I'm actually a fan of yours too. I really appreciate when you asked me if I would be interested in coming on the podcast. I had looked into things. I had heard about you before through somebody who commented on my YouTube video when my YouTube channel was brand new, and I'm like, that's odd, because I had never heard of you before. But they were like, you need to watch this Travel Evolve, because I made a video on loneliness. And apparently you did something on loneliness as well. And I was like,
a good friend of mine out in L.A. I had a good friend of mine from Mexico. She's from Mexico City, and Sandra, and she's an author, and she did one. And we talked about how being alone on the road can be really therapeutic, and you're probably experiencing that. You have some time to think. I don't know how old your kids are, but I'm a lot older than you, and trust me, you need this time alone, and it actually helps you become a better dad, a better husband with the time you're spending by yourself. I'm just telling you. Hopefully, when you get home, give your wife that opportunity to go and do some stuff too, and you can take over the reins, because it'll help both you guys out a lot. Just some free advice on something. All right, so free advice from Uncle Mark, I guess. I don't know. So, all right, let's jump into some of this stuff. You and I came on to. I appreciate everything we've been talking about, because I just really wanted our audience to get to know you. And I really do advise everyone to, if you're older like me, jump on TikTok. It's actually it's a mind suck. Next thing you know, an hour goes by and you're watching people do either crazy stuff that athletically, or jumping off, diving off cliffs. But Rich will come up, and really check him out, because everything I've read and seen is pretty spot on. You and I want to talk about what's happening right now. You, like you said, you got into travel nursing, and I'm guessing around, what is that, like 2019, right?
I would say 2018. Is that right?
Late 2018?
December of 2018. So, late 2018.
So, I guess let me just throw it out there. How, roughly, gross weekly, back in those days, what was kind of a contract that was a contract you were looking at when you first, if you remember, if you were first going at?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, I definitely remember. My first travel assignment was on a floor that had tons of different travel nurses. We did nothing but talk about pay, and what was acceptable for pay, and what our goal was for pay. And mind you, this was the Midwest, so it was on the Ohio River, and at that time, we were hoping, like a buddy of mine said, that he was hoping for $1,500 a week take-home pay. That's what he was hoping. Now, these were for normal contracts. These were not for crisis contracts, because you have normal contracts and you have crisis-related contracts. Crisis contracts, They usually pay higher. They usually don't keep you as long as 13 weeks. They usually, boot you out. You need to start a little bit quicker and you need to leave a little bit faster. And so you're in and out. Sometimes they're covering for strikes, but they'll pay higher. But the normal contracts in the Midwest area, they were looking at hoping to take home $1,500 a week. You go out towards California, right. You'd see those numbers. At the time, I saw like $2,600 a week, $2,900 a week. That was kind of the general, go-to out in California is what we were hoping for as travel nurses.
Yeah, I remember that. You're right, because that 2,000 mark, if a traveler had a net pay of about $2,000, that was a good week. But usually, they earned it. It wasn't 36 hours. It was usually either some holiday or certainly some call-in or overtime, or it was a 48-hour shift, flat out. I mean, I remember 17 was kind of what we would see. I've always been a fan of thinner margins and paying travelers more. I just believe you can grow a company faster and you can actually make more money as a company if you pay travelers more. I know, freaking weird, but that's the way I feel.
We appreciate that too, actually.
Well, I think you would. But, so that you're right. Okay, so now pandemic hits. You're a new traveler, and holy cow! I mean, you talk about let's talk about now in a little while, but let's talk about that first big oomph. I'm talking about 2 years ago. So March, April, February, March, April of 2020. What happened then?
Are you talking about just in general, pay-wise? Okay. So I can tell you what happened for a lot of people. It did not happen for me right off the bat. I was late to this party, and I did not realize how late I was to this party because I was still stuck in the, oh man, dude, I just need $1,500 a week. I'm content, I'm chilling.
Sure.
And I was in the business of renewing my contract whenever I could, just because of the places that I was at. I ended up liking them. Well, I was smack dab in the center of COVID when I randomly got a $500 a week raise. And I was like, oh, hey, that's kind of neat. Like, it wasn't a contract thing. It was just kind of mid-contract. Like, oh, hey, by the way, the hospital that you're working at, they're giving you $500 more a week. And so I was thoroughly excited about that.
Right.
But it was during that time that I had realized that there were people, 36-hour contracts, 48-hour contracts, bringing home, in the 4,000. I mean, their gross pay was around, $4,200. Some people, so which is definitely double what we were making before. And, really kind of opened my eyes. And I actually met a local travel nurse at the time who said she was bringing home like $2,700, and she was right around the corner from her house without taking a stipend.
So the radius rule went away. They didn't care, right? That was part of it. We saw that from our end. It's like, I don't care. All those rules dropped. It was more, here we go. Especially on the east side. I mean, I'll use the opposite hand. On the eastern part of the country, it felt like from New York down to really up in Georgia at the very beginning. It seemed like there was a lot there. Certainly out Washington, Seattle area, but that was crazy. So what we saw, let's talk about that on our end, was I used to use, for a lot of my things I did with my former company and a lot of things I've done, I've been on social media for a decade now. We used to use $75 as the bill rate for kind of a good average. It wasn't crazy high. It wasn't really low. And there was, every once in a while I'd eke that up. It's like, if we use 75, people are going to think that's going to be too low because our numbers we wanted numbers to be accurate. But if we portrayed a number to be so low, people are like, well, I don't want to go work for that company. Their pay rate's too low. So we had to be careful in making sure we were on it. But I remember very specifically 75 being the model. And as a matter of fact, the company, and we won't mention it, I know you know my company, but I always like to keep that kind of behind the scenes because it's not important on this. When I was creating the model for that, I started with 75 because this was back in 2019. And I'm like, that's what we're going to go with because I want to make sure that my projections were right. Well, 150 was almost instantly the amount of the bill rate. Yeah, I mean, it really was. It was like, boom. Instantly. Now, not everywhere in the country, but it was like $150 bill rates and I've never seen that. At that point, 20 years in the industry, and it was like, what is going on? Now, in all candidacy, I'm pretty sure that a lot of those facilities were getting some assistance, whether it be from state or federal. You may know more than I do about that. But there was money that it wasn't just being, and I don't know if we ever really will, but I do know a couple of the biggest conglomerates, did talk about that back at the end of last year when they showed how much money that they made. But there was all of a sudden huge money, right? Let's forget about where it came from, but it was interesting to know that labor costs for nursing, especially at that point, it was more nursing than allied. all of a sudden just doubled. And we know how hospitals work. They like to make money last time I checked, and they do. They're really good at it. Very, very good at making money. So for all of us, it was like, what is going on? And so travelers, you being one of them, I mean, you just kind of had a little bit of a hiccup. I mean, I saw $10,000 a week assignments. My company was offering 6, 7, 8 in some really wacky locations. Now there was a price to pay. You walked into a hellhole. You walked into bad policy, bad PPD. All that stuff was part of it. I mean, it wasn't free. Put it that way. Nothing ever is in our industry. As if you ever follow anything I do, you earned every bit of it. But that was insane because people were making crazy money. Now, obviously, with taxes, as you and I just talked about previously, there's only a limit to what you can take tax-free. So it was kind of a crazy social experiment watching one particular segment of our country go from a certain income to literally sometimes 4 times the amount of income and getting taxed appropriately on that. So it was kind of interesting. I used to listen to a lot of this stuff on Facebook with people complaining about how much taxes were being taken on. I'm like, well, what do you want to do? Just keep it? I mean, everybody does, right? Everyone's supposed to keep that tax money, but it doesn't work that way. Okay, so things went through the roof, and you and I are going to talk about it. And then now, tell me about now. What are you seeing? Pay rise as far as your offers? Has it eked back down? Are you still seeing the same where you are?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So here's the thing. What I can say is like that example of things doubling, I'm still seeing contracts very high. I am seeing that they are coming down. Like I would say they peaked not terribly long ago. It's where the contracts were just so incredibly high. Like they've been going like this for a while. For I think all of 2021, the contracts were just steadily going up. And I think right now we're actually kind of just a little bit coming on the downward angle of contracts is what I'm seeing. Because I like to monitor a lot of the contracts, a lot of available contracts, even when I'm on assignment, just so I can see what the market is doing. Because realistically, I think that's, it gives me a good idea of if I should extend and at what rate I should extend at, instead of just blindly accepting a position like I used to do back, back in early 2020 when COVID was crazy. Yeah. That's pretty much, that's where I think we're at. I think I've been seeing a lot of, the same contracts at a lower rate for the same amount of hours. And usually I try to monitor 36-hour-a-week contracts. I think those are a good way to figure things out.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. I think what's happening, I still see, matter of fact, for today's example, I'm still going to use a $150 bill rate because you're right, it's still there. We had higher rates. I've got rates that are lower. I have nurses on $100 bill rates. I'll tell you right now, that's about the lowest for an RN. I've got surge techs and some allied folks that are on $100 bill rates. I do have a couple of close to $200 rates. I've got 195 out there right now. It really depends upon the area. So what I think is happening, I'm just guessing here, is it feels to me like we lost a lot of healthcare professionals in the last 12 months.
Oh, that's absolutely true.
And I think that while the hospitals are trying to reduce their rates, the supply is less. I mean, I said that on an episode I did with a couple of guests, saying that no matter what you feel about vaccine mandates or about what's happening or just flat out burnout, this is not good for people that want health care as opposed to people that are providing it. For those of us that need health care, this is not a good thing. For those of us that are providing health care, it may not be a bad thing. But again, you're going to earn it because nothing's free. It's not like your job has become simpler. I would imagine some of your assignments have gotten a little more difficult with the nurse to patient ratio or just what's expected of you.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that was one of the first things that we saw. I mean, and I work in the ICU, just to let everybody know. So normally in the ICU, you either have a 1-to-1 ratio if you have a really sick patient on like lots of crazy things, or it'll be like a 2-to-1, which is most common for like ICU. Well, ever since COVID, lots of people have been regularly making the ratios 3-to-1, regularly making them 3-to-1,
that's scary. It's scary for the public. It's
scary
right?
because of how unsafe it is. Yeah, and it doesn't really. Yeah, it's not even the amount of work. It's just how unsafe it is in those settings.
Let's just walk into
the
it.
Nurse.
For those of us that, again, I've been in an ICU many times, and just the amount of, let's just talk about leads and things going to your pumps on one patient, to have that all squared away in your head and to be triple checking and have 3 patients like that, to me, that is terrifying. Terrifying as a father of somebody that may be in the ICU or a husband. I don't know how you guys can handle that. The amount of pressure on you for something like that is insane. Like I said, you're earning it, every penny of it. I really do believe that. So rate wise
that.
now, what are you seeing as far as like I don't know if you want to talk take home or you want to talk gross, but we talked about 1,500 being kind of a good ballpark. What is it going on like right now in your world? What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, no, I think a good ballpark for take home pay right now, a good ballpark is around $3,000 a week. I think that's a solid average to shoot for, which is definitely double than what it was back in the day. I think that's a really smart average, obviously, and that's for 36 hours too.
Right.
That's not for 48 hours a week, And
Are you saying gross or net, by the way?
No, I'm saying net take home pay.
So that's a take home of 156, which means
yeah.
you're talking about a $200,000 probably, based upon taxes and what's you're not all that's not being taxed, but probably 50,000 of your income is probably being taxed. Just ballparking, and I could be totally off on that.
Sure.
Which means your income, taxable income, is probably about 200 grand.
Yeah.
Into just the income itself, right? Then you've got
give or take. Yeah,
right,
give or take.
somewhere along that way. Actually, so you're about 50,000 of that 150. You've only probably paid 50,000 in taxes because the rest of it is going to be probably tax free if you're following the rules right. So that's probably what.
Yeah, I mean, it all depends on where you're at and how much they're willing to pay you for a stipend.
Right.
I think last year I made 66,000 in a stipend. So somewhere in that neighborhood.
Yeah.
And that's just for the tax-free stuff. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So what we talked about earlier is that this sounds great. A nurse, for example, in your case, we'll use nurse, but obviously we've got allied professionals listeners too. A nurse making a couple $100,000 plus potentially, and there's obviously potential for more, certainly potential for less. I like your ballpark, by the way. I think 3,000, in my opinion, right now, just my advice. I like that too. I think the higher the take home, the more risky it is that you will lose that job faster as soon as that census drops or as soon as the pencil pushes and hospitals go, what are we paying? They're rich this kind of money for. Be the first to go. Yeah. So I like the high paying.
See ya.
Yeah, but don't be silly and don't take a $2,000 job if there's ones that are more available. Look at the mass and the bulk and know where your perfect place is. So what we saw and what you and I have been talking about privately behind the scenes before we did this episode was that a lot of travelers were giddy and have been giddy and should be justifiably giddy at how much money they're making. And that's true. And I believe that agencies, and this is my opinion, and I think I've proven this to myself. I can't really prove this out there on People for Travel Evolved, but it seems to me very openly that agencies' margins have bumped up because what's happening is agencies realize how giddy travelers are about the money they're making, and they're able to hide a thicker margin under a bigger bill rate. Back in 2019, I was pretty consistently saying that agency bill rates, the average mom and pop lifestyle business, couple hundred traveler on the road, about a 26% margin. I believe, and by the way, the big three, as I call them, we won't mention names. I don't want their attorneys after me again like they've been before on my stuff.
Yeah, we don't need any trouble.
Right.
That's right. Don't send any attorneys my way, please.
No, they were at 30% because they're publicly traded. You could see they were making $1 billion. They had $1 billion in revenue. And they had $300 million in net profit. Last time I checked, that's pretty easy math. So they were at 30, which again, I wasn't complaining. There's reasons why they're at 30. They have a job everywhere. I mean, a nurse or a allied professional went to work for them knew that you weren't going to be the highest paying, but you could go wherever you wanted to go in the country. And like I've always said, if I was a CEO of that company, I would be pushing that aspect as opposed to how much money you're making because it's a benefit. Now, I believe heartedly, in my heart of hearts, that most mom and pop lifestyle businesses are at that 30% margin or close. 29 is what I'm guessing. Based upon what all the travelers send me, I get contracts literally daily. Check this out. Tell me what you think. What's the margin here? And it's really easy to figure out, especially when I can see the bill rate if I have the same position. So agencies are making a ton of money. Now, I want to qualify this a little bit because what we do as an agency, in my opinion, I've said this multiple times, I think the biggest benefit we offer in this whole cycle of putting a traveling professional into a hospital is we allow a hospital to float payroll. We pay for the traveler while we wait to get paid. In my opinion, that is the agency's biggest true benefit. If you really think about it objectively, what else do? We harass you, we find you the jobs, we go after this, we do some credentialing work, we keep you up on making sure that you don't your BLS or your PALS doesn't expire, and we pay you
set
weekly.
A couple alarms and some.
Yeah, we pay you weekly, but for 30% of a $150 bill rate, let's talk about this. So let's have an open, candid discussion. Now, here's what I will tell you.
And this is yeah.
Go ahead.
No,
you brought.
Oh.
So
me first. Okay.
Yeah.
You first.
No,
all right,
you
who's
first.
going first? All right. So talking about the bill rate and talking about margins real quick. I have heard some insanely different things. Like, people are so convinced that they know exactly what the bill rate for most agencies is in my comments section on TikTok. I have heard the most outlandish things. I mean, we have people claiming that the majority of agencies are taking 50%.
Right.
But anytime you ask for a source, it's just crickets on the other side.
Let me address that.
Yeah, so we have no idea as travelers. We have no clue as travelers what the margins are. I mean, if you're having a hard time figuring out what other agencies are doing for margins, unless you have some concrete data next to you, like for us, it's next to impossible. We're just playing the guessing game.
There's a really big reason. I think we could maybe get rid of some misconceptions, you and I, right now. The reason that people think 50%, and I've heard that too, is because of this. They find out what the bill rate is. Let's say it's $150. They look at what they're bringing home as far as a gross amount, and it's about 50%. And so they immediately go, that's it. There are two slices of the pie that they're not considering. One of them is, the biggest one is the taxes that a company is paying on your taxable income. It's not free money. It doesn't come out of my margin. It doesn't come out of your slice of the pie. It is a separate slice of pie. So a lot of people just don't realize that for every dollar you spend and you put through a payroll company for payroll, there is a payroll tax you have to pay the government to pay that person.
Okay.
So the bigger the income is, the bigger that is. And right now, with so much of it being taxable because there's so little tax free, if I'm paying somebody $50 an hour, I probably have another $10 an hour that I have to pay the government for that payroll. It's no different than paying an internal employee. And that's probably the biggest thing that travelers don't realize. The second one's smaller, and that is the fact that vendors charge us a percentage, a fee. So, for example, the average right now seems to be about 5%. So on a $150 bill rate, that's $7.50 an hour that we have to pay a vendor. I'm going to do some quick math for you, just to be able to play and be able to have that contract. So for every hour you work on a normal work week, we're paying, it's not a big deal, $270 on a 36-hour work week. Well, times 13, that means 270 times 13. So on a contract, we're paying them $3,500 for a $150 bill rate. Times 4 weeks out of 4 assignments a year, that's $14,000 a year for one traveler goes to a vendor for posting a job that we play in. Vendors make a lot of money, and they make it doesn't seem like a big chunk, but it is a huge chunk that comes out before any of us calculate our margins. So when I talk about 30% margins, that's after that 5% is taken out. So we're talking in our case here, on a $150 bill rate, we're really talking about $142.50 that we see. The 30% is out of that $142.50, not out of the $150. So we calculate that first. We're not going to see it. So let's calculate our 30% margin on what we're really going to get paid back, because that's how it works. The hospitals pay the vendor the full $150. The vendor keeps their 5%, and they write us a check or put an ACH into our account for the remainder for that week. So they get their money first and fast. Those are the two figures that I think confuse a lot of travelers, and that's why when they look at the raw numbers, it looks like, on appearance, like an agency's making 50%. If an agency was making 50%, you and I both know they wouldn't be in business long, because nobody would work for that company, because it would be the worst pay out.
And that's always been my counter offer as well. With as many agencies that are out right now, and since everything is supply and demand, the supply of nurses is already low. The demand is already high. Nurses right now are kind of in the driver's seat of where you want to work if you're a travel nurse.
Absolutely.
You have the option. And so if you find an agency that is offering a contract at, say, $1,000 less per week than the agency next door, and you're doing the exact same job, why would anyone work for that first agency? It's not going to take long before word of mouth travels, and people are going to be like, you know what, I got to go. I'm out of here. I'm getting the same benefits. I'm doing the same amount of work, and I'm getting paid $1,000 more per week. Like that's why, basically, a little bell goes off in your mind when people make these crazy claims, and you're just like, no, that doesn't really pass the sniff test.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So those big companies we talked about that do have exclusivity on a contract, that's why they can take those big margins, because if you want to go there, and there are big systems in some really desirable locations in the country that they have exclusivity on, they will actually subcontract to some of us. But if you want to go there, you're going with them, which means they get to dictate that. And you know what? Like you just said, it's a free country. You don't have to go to work there. If you go to work there, you've got the location. You're going to make less, but you may not care at the end of the day. But you're absolutely right. It is a. Well,
Yeah.
I heard bells and like I heard Cinderella, music in my ears when you were talking about going to work for the company because it's the truth. I mean, it is insane how many of us have the exact same position, and we all kind of do the same thing. It is the craziest business in the world.
It's something.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. Okay, so let's talk about what an agency's making. And the reason I want to kind of qualify it was I wanted to say that that does suck, by the way. The bigger the bill rate, the more money a company has out there. So when I mentioned our benefit being that we float payroll, that is a great benefit. But realize that, and I'm going to defend this here. Sometimes I don't always, but I'm going to say that it becomes a lot of money, which means it's risky. I have a facility right now, a system that owes me a ton of money, and they've said, we're going to pay you. We just can't figure out when. That's scary to me. And this is a long-term care system that owes me a bunch of money. Travelers gone. I've got 3 travelers that work there. They're gone. I'm talking 150 grand. And they're saying they'll pay me when they can. So that's the thing I want people to understand. This isn't free. I mean, agencies don't. There are risks to be taken. So I think that's why I've always said, because of that risk, that's our best benefit. So you shouldn't be making 30% because of the risk, but there is a price to pay. The bigger the bill rate right now, the more money we have out there. So I just heard a collective wah out there from travelers, and I get it. I understand that. Agencies make a lot of money, but that is part of it, is that the bigger the bill rate, the bigger the risk is right now. So I'll qualify that before I go into some numbers so that I will tell you, yes, everybody is making, as we said, big money right now, including us agencies. And I think travelers should know that. It shouldn't be, in my opinion, a bigger disparagement now that there's COVID there. It should be, in my opinion, the same, maybe even less, because at the end of the day, when we get paid, we're making more money than we were before for the exact same effort. It doesn't cost us any more time or energy or effort to credential you, to bring you on board, to have recruiters text you and social media you and put jobs out there and call you or whatever it is that you connected with. It doesn't cost us any more to do that last time I checked. Matter of fact, as social media becomes more accessible, it seems to be actually easier. So let's talk about these numbers. Let's talk about that 150 bill rate. And then you can start firing with some questions. All right, so here we go. I already said $150 bill rate. We got a 5% vendor fee that comes out, which means that's $7.50 an hour that goes away. We don't see that. You don't see that. The government doesn't see that. It's just gone. It's a different piece of the pie. So now we're dealing with $142.50. Now, if you look at those 30% margin, I'm going to use that. So maybe I'm being a little bit tough. Maybe it's 29, but I wrote down 30, so I can't go back because I don't want to redo the math.
That's okay. You can't go back now.
We're talking about a $150 bill rate. That means an agency in this case is making $42.75 an hour, which last time I looked is not 50% of $150. That would be $75. That's still a ton of money. I remember back we were making like $15 to $20 an hour was outstanding. Outstanding. Right. That was a great deal, right?
And that probably wasn't very long ago either.
In 2019, the end of 2019, or first couple of months of 2020. I mean, it was like that.
Yeah.
So I always talk about the magical number. You're an ICU nurse. You notoriously work, I'm sure, 12-hour shifts. So you're working 13 weeks times 36 hours, which that magical number is 468. So that's the number of hours that we are assuming and have to assume you're going to work over the course of an assignment, which means we're going to make $42.75 times 468. That's how all agencies kind of decide what that pay rate's going to be, because they're making those assumptions. Anything more than that, in my opinion, is bonus, which is why I always have trouble with some of those things like over 36 hours and things that I would urge everyone to listen to, because I think you're getting screwed on that stuff. So if you think about this, an agency on a 30% margin on a $150 bill rate with a 5% vendor fee, just kind of calculating, is pulling in 20 grand on you in 13 weeks. 20 grand. Now, that doesn't, I mean, if you think about it, you're making, what did we just say? I mean, how much a week? So but that's a lot of money. I used to make $5,000 on an assignment, $5,000 on an assignment. So on a deal like this, with 30% margin, which I've never made 30%, $20,000. You multiply that, obviously, times 4 assignments a year, that's 80 grand. Right. Last time I checked, if you have 100 travelers, that means you're bringing in $8 million in revenue without any expense. I'm not talking about expenses of all your recruiters and all your insurance and your rent and your advertising. $8 million on a small company with 100 travelers. That is a small company, right?
Yeah.
That is not. Also, we just have a whole bunch of travelers that are going to say, "I'm starting my own agency."
Yeah. I can see it now. Yeah, travel nurses leave bedside to start their agency.
I've got them.
Mark
I've got
on
friends
Travel
that I'm trying to
Evolved
help.
said, yeah.
I'm trying to
Mark
help
on
a few
Travel
people.
Evolved said, "This is what you can do with a small business."
Well, right now,
That's right.
well, yeah, but you got to have the connections. I mean, the biggest thing is people are like, well, how do I get contracts? I'm like, oh God, you got to start off from the very beginning. So there's a lot to that. Big money right now. I mean, everybody's making good money. Yes, for that $8 million, that company with 100 travelers at a 30% margin has a lot of money out. A lot of money out at any given point. Millions of dollars in their AR that hospitals owe them. Hopefully they've got to be able to get it back. The cost of their, if they're running without any kind of, if they have their own money, they've been around for a while. If they've got a line of credit, they're paying interest on that line to be able to float that money. Some of it gets really expensive. Trust me, I know. So there is tons of money being made by everybody out there, and I hope that I'm not trying to make travelers upset, but I want them to understand that you're not the only one making money. And the point of this kind of is that that should be $6 million. I mean, it used to be $6 million. Now I think it's eked up to $8 million because of, I believe, certain company greed, because you can hide it. Because everybody seems to be eking their margins up because, like you said, supply and demand. If you look at a conglomerate of all the different rates, everyone's kind of around the same general ballpark. You mentioned 1,000 difference. I do see those outliers here and there where 1,000 high, 1,000 lower. But for the most part, everybody currently in our industry is making a lot of money, with the exception of the hospitals. I think they're making money too. I mean, last time I checked, they still don't lose anything.
Sure.
So,
yeah, they're still doing all right until they're petitioning Congress, But that's another story, right?
Well, and I
so,
thought
you guys
about
need investigated. That's what's going on.
I wondered if we were going to talk about that. That was going to come up with our conversation. I had a lot of thoughts on that. My first reaction is, what happened in the country I lived in? Last time I checked, a nurse or an employee shouldn't be limited to what they could make. Last time I checked, does an underwater welder get are they capped out on what they can make? That's an incredibly dangerous job. But do they get capped out? I don't know anybody that's petitioning for that. The company that hires or employs that underwater welder, is any congressman and women pushing for that? I personally think this will work its way out. I just don't see how in our country we can limit what someone makes. I mean, if someone's making too much money, it will work itself out. I don't think we need more government, as always, to come in and start to decide what we can and can't do.
It's almost like supply and demand plays a role, as it should, and then until it plays a role in favor of us, and then then obviously we need to just kick supply and demand out, and we're going to limit what these agencies can take and what these nurses can make because of that. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous, the whole idea of it, to be honest.
But yet, people in Congress can make as much money they want on stocks and everything else.
Oh, those guys are not hurting for income. I will tell you that.
No. So I mean, it's so crazy. But yeah, I mean, it's part of it. I think people should understand that right now this is a good industry for everyone. Now, we just talked about how much money agencies are making, and they are, and you guys should recognize that. They're making a lot of money. They have a lot more risk. So again, I'm gonna keep qualifying that. It's not like it's free money to them either. I mean, there's a lot more out there. I'm personally can experience that. I mean, I'm worried about a decent chunk of change that I may not get. I may have paid a traveler. Now I wouldn't be out 150 because I didn't pay 150, but I'd be out 150 is the pay and it's my particular margin of what I'm making. Yeah. So I wouldn't be out, but it's still, I mean, that stuff scares you, when you have that. And you've got a vendor, by the way, who isn't helping you collect that because they don't care. It's on you. You go get it.
Yeah, they got paid already. From what I understand, you were saying they get paid at the beginning.
They did get paid, actually, because their situation is different. I actually have to write them a check. But so it's just, I mean, everything is kind of unique. And so where it's going, I mean, I think you and I could sit there and talk about, but I think it's okay to talk about the fact that travelers aren't the only ones that are in a complete heyday right now, and I don't think it can continue. I think like you said, more people that jump into being an agency, the more competition there is, which means there's going to be some people that are not going to be able to survive, and be able to make it. So I feel like we're in a really interesting state of change in travel healthcare in general. I think the next 12 months are going to be really interesting. The last 12 certainly were. As to where we're going, I said 2 years ago, we will never go back down to those $75 bill rates. I don't know how close
I
we're
don't
going
think
to
so
get,
either.
but I'm guessing 20-25% higher than what they've always been because, I didn't know at that time that there would be a reduction in the amount of people in the supply, right? How many people are available?
Yeah.
I didn't know that 2 years ago. I didn't realize that there would be people that would be quitting. I just felt like more people would travel and it would become a bigger situation where hospitals had to start saying we really need to kind of step up to the plate a little bit if we want to get the quality that we're looking for. And I believe that's going to be the case. I think 90 to 100 $110 bill rates will be our relatively long-term future, in my opinion. But I think these 150 that we're seeing, I do think they're going to go away because, it just is. And hopefully there's more, people coming into to aid you guys that are out there in the field. There's more people maybe going, hey, maybe I want to become a healthcare professional because it is lucrative. It's not just a $75,000, $80,000 a year job locally at my facility, depending upon what part of the country you're in. Of course, that really varies. It is a six-figure income, which means more people would say, "Hey, I think I could deal with the incredible stress of, in your case, nursing school and what that was like." So, I don't know. It's kind of fascinating to think about, but I don't know. You and we can keep talking about it all day long, but
Yeah.
this
Don't forget
industry
the
is wild.
personality change that comes with going through nursing school and becoming a nurse as well. Like, you don't get to keep
that
the
right?
same you're not the same individual when you started nursing school to when you've been a nurse for at least a year. Like, you're not.
Yeah.
Like, it's almost like you go through all the stages of grief during nursing school and during your starting time as a nurse, and literally changes who you are. It's and not necessarily for the better. I wish they talked more about that back in nursing school, and maybe I would have reconsidered things. I mean, I'm glad that I did it now, looking back where I'm at. Travel nursing has been the one redeeming quality for me, and which is one of the reasons why I still do the stuff on TikTok, is because travel nursing for me has way more benefits than just the income that I get paid. There are insane amounts of benefits, and notably for me, it's actually less stressful after you get past that first week. I think it's less stressful than a staff job, realistically.
Interesting. I've got a daughter who wanted to be, who is considering being a nurse, and I mean, I may make some enemies, but I am talking her out of it every day because her personality does not match what it takes to be a nurse. She's a different person, and you know that. I know nurses, and she is not. I cannot think of something that she'd be less. Would be less applicable for what she wants to do.
She would go through the stages of grief for sure. That would that would be.
I just don't think I don't think she'd like it. I don't think she would enjoy nursing school. It's too much pressure for her, and I just don't. It is what it is. So, well, I appreciate it today. I really want to urge our listeners to tune into you. So you've got this. So Travel Nurse Rich on YouTube. You've got Travel Nurse Rich on TikTok.
Right.
You also are jumping into Instagram and Twitter and those kinds of things.
Yeah. I mean, I do have an Instagram and a Twitter set up. My Instagram only has less than 200 people following me, so obviously we're not doing great things over there. They say the Instagram's a nurturing platform. And, I haven't quite made it to the nurturing stage yet. I'm still kind of the, TikTok traffic stage of everything. So that's okay.
Well,
we're getting there.
my
Got
hat
some
goes
big
off
plans,
to you.
though.
TikTok is hard. Again, I've tried to just have some friends of mine follow me on TikTok, and I just don't. I have like 10 videos. Most of them my son playing hockey or me at a professional hockey game, and it's a difficult. It is. I think more so than this, you really have to put yourself out there because you got to be a little goofy. You got to be fun. You got to be engaging. You are all those things. And your stuff has gone. I mean, you mix it up. You've got some things that are funny, some things that are head scratchers, and you've got some things that are.
That's because I get bored really easily. That's my problem there. I just get really bored, and then I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do something really weird today. Like my last video that I made is a really weird video. I put on a wig and everything, and to play two parts, did almost like a skit. Oh my goodness! And it started to blow up, which was hilarious to me because I didn't even plan it to. Like, I just thought, no one's going to watch this, and then sure enough, everybody's watching it. So anyway,
the haters are really going to come out on you now.
Yeah,
you're going nuts. Well, I urge everyone to listen to you because. Again, at TikTok, you follow somebody, and that way, you're seeing all the different things you want to see. But Rich will come up, and I'm telling you guys, I was really impressed. I'm not trying to have a mutual admiration side, but I was very impressed with your knowledge on the numbers And you've done it all by research, learning, and the advice you're giving is really solid. So
Thank you.
I think there should be more of you guys out there. I think the combination of what you're seeing from Travel Evolved, from Travel Nurse Rich, I think this stuff eventually is going to change the industry. I think that we have an opportunity to provide the best information you and I can, right? And that's what I think both of us are trying to do. It may not always be 100% right. It may not be perfect. We do our best to try to make it that way. But if you listen to this stuff that Rich is putting out there, you're going to learn some things, and you're going to be better armed at being a traveler. And you're going to have a little bit more power behind you to negotiate the contracts you're looking for, to have the lifestyle you want. And you guys are absolutely in control. And you're right. You always have been. More so now, and you have choices as a traveler. I don't care if you're, if you're in imaging or you're an ICU nurse. You have options, and you've got power. You're the commodity. And last time I looked, all of us should be jumping through hoops to try to convince you to go to work for us and to stay working for us, which means we have to earn it every single day. So it's interesting. Well, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking some time. I need to get you to get some sleep there. Are you on the middle of a 2 or 3 day, or are you at the end?
No, this is day 1 of a 2 day, and then I have 1 day off, and then I have 4 days. So I've got a few things going. I'll be working most of the time. I'll try to find a way to fit some videos in between. It's kind of weird. The other day I was scrolling through TikTok, and an ad came up, and I was in the ad, and I was like, oh, that's odd. I don't remember.
Really? Do you get royalties for that or something? That's
I did check the box that said they can reuse it, and I did give them permission. Okay. I just thought it was going to be reused like on my page, and I don't ever see the stuff that I made, But like scrolling through, and I see my face come up. Like,
was it like a TikTok ad, or was it an ad for like
TikTok ad?
So it was them promoting TikTok. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was absolutely
I think you've
hilarious.
made it. I think you've made it. If you are actually getting
you see myself
TikTok
through an ad.
Yeah, that's kind of impressive.
That's
Good
funny.
for you. Well, I urge you guys, check him out, Travel Nurse Rich, on all these different mediums. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today.
Yeah, and thanks for being so open, Mark.
I
appreciate you being a CEO, being open, and literally telling people what nobody else is willing to say. So really appreciate that from my perspective, sure.
Thanks. Much appreciated. All right, we'll talk to you hopefully here soon.
All right, sounds good.
All right. Oops. Always do that. All right, so there you go. That was fun. Oops, God, every time I do something with that, I don't even know if it's going to stay now. We'll see. I might just have to get rid of that to start off with. If I spit that much, then we got a problem. Very fun episode. I enjoyed doing that a lot. We didn't get into as much of the... he was going to try to pick my brain a little bit, which we'll do next time. I think we're going to have Rich back. I always say we're going to have guests back, but we've got so many guests that I want to get on that I will have a number of people back. But he for sure... We wanted an opportunity for him to kind of have more of a reverse interview too, where he could ask me some questions that are important to him. Maybe just today was a good introduction to Rich. As time goes by, we'll get him back on. As he becomes, as long as he doesn't become too TikTok famous, then we'll be able to get him back again. But really, really fascinating, very fun interview to talk about. There was a lot of meat there. We had a good discussion about, I think, where this industry has come and how fast it's come this far. Things are just really, really different than they were for the majority of my career in healthcare travel. I've just never seen a time like this when things are so lucrative for travelers, lucrative for agencies. I do believe that hospitals are making a really good amount of money. I know some of them are. I think some are struggling. I think some agencies are struggling. I think some travelers are struggling because of lack of need in their specialty. We've seen that over the last couple of years. So things are really kind of moving and evolving, but I loved what he said about, again, you guys are the commodity. You guys have the choice. And you really should be looking at what company is out there giving you the best opportunity you can, fairly, effectively, like we've said multiple times on Travel Evolved. This is a dinosaur of an industry. This industry, from the agency standpoint, hasn't changed much since I've been involved, and I don't think it's changed much before in the years before I got involved. It is just the same thing over and over again with different rates, potentially some slightly different recruiting processes, but for the most part, the model of how companies function and work and what they bring and provide to the table hasn't really changed or evolved that much. So you guys have those choices, and I would urge you to, don't just blindly go into an assignment. Really look at what that company's paying you, what they're offering, what other companies are offering, so you can really make a good, effective decision on what makes financial sense. Like he said, I mean, why would you take an assignment for $1,000 less a week when it's basically the exact same thing? It's just who it is that you're working for. I mean, pretty simple stuff. So I really appreciate him taking the time out. I know he's going to get burned out, and I mean, he's 2 hours ahead of me, so it's getting to be way past his bedtime. So I appreciate that. Rich, thanks for joining us today. Guys, as always, I also appreciate you guys joining us today. I hope this was a fun one. I hope it was informative. I think it was a little of both. I want to get him back on, and let's have a little bit more of an opportunity to talk about some more things. As our industry changes and evolves even more, I think it'd be good to have him back. So guys, as always, I appreciate it, and I will catch you next time on Travel Evolved.